This young man happened to be from China, and I asked this question, and he, instead of staying in his own self, he said, "Oh, poor me." And I just cracked up, laughed so hard because he was so upset it just came out, "Oh, poor me." But there is no "oh, poor me" in competition, is there? Next, and there's just a few more. Confidence. Somebody define that for me. We have chapters in books on confidence, right? Now tell me an exercise that gives you confidence. That's self-reward. As a young man growing up in Indiana, which is basketball was the big thing in Indiana, I used to take a Coke out behind the garage. We had a hoop on the garage, and I would take the Coke every day and go out and practice shooting. And if I hit, and I would make a goal for myself. If I hit 10 in a row, I could drink the Coke. If I didn't hit 10 in a row, what happened to the Coke? I took it back in the house, put it in the refrigerator. I had two brothers and never saw it again. Think about that. Self-reward. How many of us reward ourselves when we perform well? Or how many of us don't reward ourselves? Rewards is an important one, and they all do it, the good ones. They're never really satisfied. The great ones are never satisfied. They just keep coming back and working hard and getting better. How many, I shouldn't probably ask this. You don't have to raise your hand. This isn't show and tell. How many of you work it now as professors as hard as you worked when you first started? I didn't think so either. Okay. And the last one I want to share with you is that they look at pressure as a challenge instead of a threat. Do any of you get pressured? You students, are you going to have to defend your dissertations or theses? Is that pressure? Is it a challenge or is it a threat? If it's a threat, you're in trouble. If it's a challenge, you're going to be fine because you'll work at it. Now, just over the years, I just gave you like 15 characteristics. If you're interested in those, go to the ASP on the internet, and I think it's called the Kuhlman-Griffith Lecture that I gave last year at that organization as the keynote address. And all these things are on there, and you can look at it. And if you have any questions, you can email me, and I'll email you back and talk to you about them. But I think it's important that we know what the great ones do. And they are great because they've paid the price to be great, and they'll continue to do that. I'll leave you with those thoughts. One other thought that I have about ISSP. We need a woman to be president somewhere along the line. Now, Gershen's all right, but I think a woman would be better. Thank you very much.
My plan was to start with something completely different, but let me try to overcome the gap in time and to tell you also some examples. And the background is that I'm convinced that to contribute to the development of our discipline, that you need to have three experiences. First, as a researcher. Second, as a practical sports psychology, to have some background and experiences which you can reflect on the theoretical part. And a third aspect is to be a little bit involved in the management of the discipline. And that basically is the reason I'm participated in the managing council and became a president of the ISSP. And up to now, I've tried to cover all these three aspects, and now I'm in the position, let's say, as in a bird eye perspective, to think a little bit about and to reflect what was done well and what was not so good, what might be possible to improve. And I would like to give you some ideas about coming out from this perspective. So we are part in psychology for a period of time, and a German psychologist said psychology has a long past but a short history, and we can see this is true. And since 50 years we are organized as a discipline, and the ISSP contributed a lot to the establishment of sports psychology, and a lot of people are looking to psychology, the relation to psychology. For me, it is as well true that sports psychology is essential for the development of sports science, but also the other way around. Sports science is very essential for the development of sports psychology, and we should not forget it. And I liked the talk by Christopher today. It was a nice example that to be very good in applied sports psychology, you need a theoretical background. Another German psychologist, Kurt Lewin, he said nothing is more practical than a good theory. And you demonstrated it very well this morning. And this is also what I'm convinced about. So I don't want to go in any discussion who founded psychology or sports psychology, if it was established in the United States or in Germany. The fact is that the first laboratory in psychology was in Leipzig, and the assistants of Wilhelm Wundt, who was the founder and the head of this lab, have been Schulte and Zippel, and they were the first guys doing experimental study in sports psychology, and they are regarded, at least in the German-speaking countries, as a founder of sports psychology. So my part was starting in ISSP 1993. Jürgen Nitsch convinced me that after my research, or in combination with my research, I also had to contribute to the development of the discipline. And as I told you, I had to go to the managing council, and the idea was to serve and to contribute a little bit. And the little bit turned out to be a mistake, because Glyn Roberts convinced me to run for the treasurer. And in 1993, I started with $300 US, Glyn, and 8 years later we had $35,000. So I guess this was a kind of a successful period of time, and I'm convinced that also an organization only can be effective if the resources are there, also the financial resources. So in Beijing 2013, I left, and the career is, I started as a treasurer, then I was a managing council member, because the plan was to run for the presidency, and in between Keith was the president, then I became the president, the past president, and now I regard myself as the ex-president and having some suggestions from this bird eye perspective. What are these suggestions? When I started my presidency, it was a vision to use more the new technologies. At that time, the internet. And the managing council members at that time remember very well, I started to introduce the e-academy. And as I learned these days, the actual managing council initiated a lot of projects which coming very close to this vision of an e-academy running by the ISSP. And Sidonio already at that point in time said, maybe you are the e-president in the future time. So I don't want to go into the details too much, but maybe some ideas, issues, which I was not able to realize at that period of time. And maybe it's of some help for you, especially this managing council, because I have the feeling you are the right people to pick up these ideas. What I think it's necessary to attract membership is to make the membership present at our homepage. How can we do it? We can organize a file of all ISSP members, so that the membership can have a look who is also a member in the ISSP, and you can put in some information, for example, in what sports he is interested in, what area in sports psychology he feels he is an expert, and so on. I was very often asked when I had my time in Qatar, in Doha, a lot of phone calls, who is able to give consultation in sports psychology in this part of the world. And a click in the internet would be able to overcome this problem. Everybody could look who is an expert in what area in sports psychology and in what region in the world. So another thing is we could establish a data bank of experts. Experts not only in practical sports psychology, applying sports psychology, but also in research. Who is an expert or regarded as an expert in this or that area, and who is interested in providing services for other people, especially in those countries which have not a lot of universities or academies in sports psychology. All this can be done via the internet today. And part of this vision, it was the idea of some pragmatic improvements, what was, let's say, an experience in my period of time where I felt there is some gap to overcome in running the society. For example, improvements in strategies, business strategies, increase of transparency. I very often heard at that point in time that there was a lack of transparency. Who is invited, for example, to become a keynote speaker? Who is running workshops and so on? How is it done and how it is organized? So maybe we can improve the interest in ISSP by bringing more transparency to this situation. How can we do it? Very simply, I feel that it is necessary now to have a business plan. The managing council should take care for project management. I heard yesterday and today about projects. You have to manage this project, not only to develop the ideas about projects. Otherwise, you have the same experience as I have had it with my e-academy or the virtual academy. Maybe a nice idea, but you need a project plan and a project management to make it run. And this is including the financial issues, and financial issues you have to consider in a long-term perspective and in a short-term perspective. When you are a member, or especially a treasurer or president in this society, you will make the experience that a lot of people have very nice ideas how to spend money, but there are only few people who have ideas how to make money. And you need such a plan. So another thing to increase transparency is to refer to the cash auditing. You have to I don't want to criticize Ernest. Where's Ernest? He's not here, so I can criticize him. No, I don't want to criticize the previous treasurers, but you need cash auditing and financial auditing and to make it more visible what are the incomes, the annual income, the income in a period of a managing council, and what are the outgoings. And you have to provide proofs that all this is done in a serious manner. I have the feeling this is done in a very naive way up to now, and I was contributing to this naive way, but I feel we have to overcome it. So let me mention a further issue briefly, quality management. When I have been in Marrakesh and we had the keynote speaker, Shella Durai, it was a nice example that a person coming from management is interested in sports psychology and sees the area of sports psychology as adding something to his profession. We should also look to the other profession, to management, how management can help to improve our business. And quality management might be a good approach. We need visions. We need mission and objectives in a 4-year term, but also in a longer perspective. By the way, this is one of the purposes to have a past president, not only to run the 50th anniversary. So the past president has to take care that the 4-year perspective is not the only period of time to be considered. Let me refer a little bit to the World Congress. We started in Sydney to evaluate the World Congresses, the keynote speakers, the keynote speeches, the workshops, the seminars. We have to go on with it. We stopped with it in Marrakesh, and I don't know if it is the plan in Spain, but we need to know about areas of improvement.